3 spine-chilling true Home Alone tales, sinister secrets revealed from haunted houses. Sarah felt the chill crawl down her spine as she and her kids crossed the threshold into their new home. The quaint suburban streets bustled with smiling neighbors, but something just felt off. It was supposed to be a fresh start after her divorce, a chance to find stability for her and her children, Alex and Lily. Yet, as soon as night fell, the cheerful facade of the neighborhood began to shatter. At first, she dismissed the flickering lights that danced ominously across the ceilings. "It's just an old house," she reassured herself. The creaking of the floorboards was simply the house settling. But soon, the sounds grew sinister, muffled whispers in the dark, and the unmistakable feeling of being watched. It sent a chill racing through her body, and her heart pounded as the shadows deepened around her. "Mommy, Tommy says he wants to play hide-and-seek," Alex exclaimed one night, his eyes gleaming with excitement. But everything twisted in Sarah's gut. Who was Tommy? They hadn't talked about a Tommy. It started as innocent childhood chatter, but the way Lily described him made the hairs on the back of Sarah's neck stand erect. Tommy knew about their past, things that only Sarah should know. Panic set in. How could her children be having such vivid conversations about a nameless friend? As she lay in bed, wide awake, pondering the implications of what they said, she recalled her mother's stories about the eerie happenings in the very same house. It was as if the very walls of the place held history, full of secrets and shadows. The hauntings had come straight from her childhood nightmares. Those stories flooded back, nightmares that churned at the edges of her consciousness, refusing to fade into oblivion. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Sarah frantically searched for answers, seeking comfort and safety. It was then she met Mr. Thompson, her neighbor. He leaned on the fence, his smile warm, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I hear you're settling in just fine," he said, but his words dripped like poisoned honey. She shared her worries about Tommy. His smile twitched, deception hiding behind every syllable, as he warned her that children's imaginations could run wild, especially in a place with so much history. Fear erupted inside her like a wildfire.
Desperate for clarity, she started digging deep into the lore of her home, unearthing dark secrets about unsolved disappearances. Each story connected, weaving a tapestry of terror that echoed long before she arrived. Panic surged as she discovered a dark thread lurking behind Mr. Thompson's neighborly facade. Her instincts screamed he was hiding something. Outside, the shadows blurred, and she could see him outside the window, lurking, watching. Her heart hammered against her ribcage as she considered that the real horror wasn't just inside the house. Sarah glanced nervously at her kids, obliviously giggling in their rooms, playing their games with Tommy. Something twisted inside her. A confrontation loomed. Mustering her courage, she knew she had to face Mr. Thompson. But as she turned to leave, a bone-chilling whisper echoed through the hallway. "Turn back." Darkness enveloped the room, leaving her with the haunting realization. Who exactly could she trust? Suddenly, the doorknob felt frigid against her palm, an ominous weight causing her breath to hitch. Just behind her, the creeping shadow thickened, and every breath she took felt like a countdown to a revelation none of them could escape. The tension in the air was stifling, suffocating even. Sarah hesitated, her heart racing as darkness swirled, tightening its grip around her. The house seemed alive, pulsating with a sinister energy. She turned the doorknob and hesitated, aware of the shadow looming, as if it were breathing down her neck. "Mommy?" Alex's voice squeaked from the other room, innocent, yet edged with an unrecognizable fear. It snapped her back like a rubber band. They needed her. Her kids were in danger, and she was standing still, paralyzed by uncertainty. With a sudden surge of determination, she yanked open the door and rushed into the hallway.
The whispers hung in the air like smoke, curling and wrapping around her thoughts. "Mommy, come play," Lily's voice chimed softly, intermingled with giggles that cut through the darkness like shards of glass. "Kids, don't move. Stay where you are," she shouted, her voice trembling but fierce. Every fiber of her being screamed to protect them, to confront whatever haunted their home, but dread pulled at her heart like a lead weight. Just as she reached the door to their room, a frigid breeze swept past, brushing against her skin. "Tommy doesn't want you to play anymore," came that low, sinister voice again, echoing from the shadows. Fear clenched her stomach. "Tommy?" she called, steadier now. "Who are you?" Silence. Her children's laughter faltered, and for a brief moment, all she could hear was the dull thud of her heartbeat. Then it escalated into frantic clicks, as if someone or something was tapping against the walls. "Mommy, Tommy said you're not supposed to talk to him. It will make him mad." Alex's voice quivered with unmistakable dread. "Shut the door, Mommy," Lily cried, panicked. "He's getting angry."
With the weight of her children's terror crashing down on her, Sarah flung open the door to their room. The sight that met her stole the breath from her lungs. The room was darker than it should have been, shadows pulsing and flickering around the walls like a living entity. And there, in the middle of the floor, stood Tommy, a hunched figure with a smile that split open like a shadowy maw. "What did I tell you about talking to strangers?" he hissed, his voice slithering through the air, eerie and taunting. "Get away from my kids," Sarah shouted, adrenaline surging through her body. Tommy laughed, a sound that curdled her blood. "They're my friends now. They're playing a game." Alex and Lily stared up at her, confusion mixed with fear in their innocent eyes. "Mommy, we want to play," Lily whispered, but there was something grim about her tone, something hollow. "No!" Sarah screamed, lunging toward the children. In that nanosecond, everything shifted. The shadows around Tommy seemed to stretch and ripple, closing in on her and her children like a predator sizing up its prey. "Leave them alone," she fought back, but it was as if the air thickened, making it hard to breathe. With a flick at his wrist, Tommy gestured, and the shadows shrieked, a sound that clawed beneath her skin. A whirlwind of panic overtook Sarah as she grabbed her children and pulled them close. She could feel their icy skin against hers. "Run!" she barked, a primal instinct roaring through her as she thrust her body between them and the gathering darkness. They bolted toward the living room, the whispers growing louder, echoing her own terrified thoughts. "What are you doing?" came Mr. Thompson's voice, smooth and sinister, slipping into their path. "Sarah," he warned, his voice laced with false calmness. "You wouldn't want to play alone, would you?" The chill in the room deepened, and Sarah found herself unable to move. The shadows thickened, waiting, watching. The house itself was a labyrinth of terror, trapping them all. As the weight of the impending darkness loomed, she realized that escape was impossible, and the true horror had only just begun. "Why are you doing this?" she gasped, facing the terror head-on. But then, in the flickering light, she saw something horrifying behind Mr. Thompson, a glimpse of Tommy's grinning shadow extending, reaching for her children. "Mom!" they cried, and with their voices a flood of fear erupted, pushing her into a last desperate effort to fight back. In that chaotic moment, she wondered if trust was ever something she could rely on, and if it would ever come down to a life-or-death decision that would change everything forever. The shadows whispered promises of darkness, and as the darkness surged closer, she felt her resolve teetering. Could she save her children, or were they already lost to Tommy's insatiable game? The world spun around Sarah. She clutched her children tighter, their small frames trembling against her. A moment's hesitation was all it took for her mind to spiral into the abyss of fear. "We have to get out," she urged, her voice edged with panic. "Where, Mommy?" Alex whimpered, eyes wide like saucers, glistening in the half-light. "Anywhere but here." She was running now, her feet pounding against the hardwood floors as the whispers picked up momentum, the sounds of creaking and scratching echoing all around them. The shadows danced, flickering in a grotesque ballet that threatened to consume them. Suddenly, the front door loomed ahead, a singular light seeping in through the cracks. She felt a rush of hope surge through her. If they could just reach it, if they could just get outside. "Mommy, the door," Lily squeaked, pointing. But as Sarah lunged for it, the air twisted. The door quivered, then slammed shut as if a giant hand had intercepted them, locking them inside this infernal house. Her heart dropped into her stomach. "Tommy!" she screamed, fury and despair flooding her voice. "Let us go!" "Why would I do that?" The voice snickered, thick with malice. The shadows seemed to thicken around them, swirling like a storm of ink. "We're having so much fun." The kids huddled behind her, small but steadfast. "Mommy, make him stop," Alex sobbed, his words breaking like glass. They rushed toward the nearest window, but it too was walled by darkness. The air felt electric, crackling with tension. Desperation clawed at Sarah as she looked back at her kids. Their faces were filled with a dread she'd never seen. This wasn't just a game for Tommy. It was a hunt. "Think, Sarah," she urged herself. "You need a plan." Her mind raced, frantically searching for an escape. "The basement," she whispered, an idea blooming like a dark flower. "We can hide there." "Mommy, no," Lily whined. "It's even darker." "It's the only place left." With a swift decision, Sarah grabbed their hands and tugged them down the hallway, ignoring the rising panic in her throat. The shadows writhed and twisted, screeching warnings that morphed into laughter. Every step felt like a battle against the suffocating darkness, each door they passed seeming to tease freedom, but they were all locked, trapped in an endless loop. The basement door appeared at the end of the hall, a shrouded portal. "Help me," she shouted, her voice cracking. "I need you to push." Together, they heaved against the door. At first, it wouldn't budge, but then, with a sickening creak, it swung open. A wave of cold air washed over them, stale, damp, and tinged with the scent of decay. Shadows danced at the bottom of the stairs, waiting for their descent, like hungry wolves. "Mommy, I'm scared," Alex cried out. "Just hold on to me. We can do this," she said, voice steady but heart racing. With a deep breath, they plunged into the darkness, the light from the upper floor swallowed whole. The stair creaked beneath their weight, and Sarah's stomach rolled with dread. As they reached the bottom, the door slammed shut above them, sealing them into silence. The space was suffocating, the walls closing in. She fumbled with her phone, breath hitching as she tried to summon light. Flickering illumination pierced the shadows for a moment before plunging them back into pitch black. "Tommy, you can't scare us!" Sarah shouted, clenching her fists, willing her fear to transform into courage. In response, the darkness creaked and groaned, a faint whisper threading through the stifling air. "But I can, and I will. You'll never escape this game." "Mommy?" Lily's voice trembled, breaking the silence. "Is he coming?" In that moment, the floor beneath them shuddered, a low rumble that felt like the house itself was awakening. They weren't just hiding, they were awakening something terrible. "Whatever you do, don't let go of my hand," Sarah instructed, gripping them tighter until she felt their small fingers interlock. But as soon as she said it, the sensation vanished. One by one, her children slipped away from her grasp, pulled into the swirling void of darkness. "Children!" she screamed, panic ravaging her voice. The laughter returned, echoing off the damp walls, resonating in the depth of her soul. It promised the end of everything she held dear. Could she fight back against the dark, or would the shadows swallow them whole? In that moment, the truth crashed over her like a tidal wave. They would play Tommy's game, but at what cost? She felt a nudge behind her. Not from her children, but from Tommy himself. The smile stretched wider, impossibly so, an ache creasing the darkness that felt too familiar. What had she missed? What sinister surprise lurked just around the corner, waiting to claim them? The darkness gripped Sarah like a vice, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Panic surged through her as she staggered forward, calling desperately for her kids. "Alex! Lily!" Her voice echoed into the abyss, swallowed by the heavy silence.
Her hands moved against the cold, damp walls, fingers searching for a surface to anchor herself. Not even the whispers continued. It was a suffocating void. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears, a harsh reminder that the game was far from over. Suddenly, a light flickered back to life. It blinked intermittently, casting long shadows that slithered across the walls. Sarah turned, heart racing, but the source was nowhere to be found. Was it an illusion, or was there something lurking just beyond the veil of darkness? "Mommy!" Alex's voice suddenly broke through, fragile yet firm. Sarah spun around, following the voice to a corner where shadows clumped thickly, stirring like smoke. "Where are you?" she cried, her chest tightening. She felt her way toward him, heart pounding louder than before. Just as she reached out, a low growl rumbled from the depths of the void.
It curled around her like fingers, squeezing tighter than fear itself. "Stay close, sweetheart. I'm coming." But as she moved, the shadows lunged forward, wrapping themselves around her legs, dragging her back. The chill seeped into her skin, and she fought against it, grounded by pure adrenaline. "Let go of me! I won't let you take them!" she screamed, her voice slicing through the silence. The walls trembled as if responding to her fury. "Let them?" Tommy's voice echoed off the far wall, throaty and delighted. "I just want to play, but it seems you've broken the rules." Sarah's mind raced. "What rules?" "There's only one I care about," he taunted, footsteps stalking through the darkness. "Trust. You had to keep the three of you together. And now—" He trailed off, leaving the cruel anticipation hanging thick in the air. Click. The lights flickered again, more insistently this time. Suddenly, they illuminated a small area of the basement, revealing a figure crouched in the corner. Lily. Her small body was trembling, eyes wide though unseeing, staring into the nothingness. "Mommy, please," she whispered, voice a mere breath. "I can't hold on." "Lily?" Sarah lunged toward her, overcoming the shadows that pulled her away. She grabbed her daughter's arm, desperately yanking her back. But Tommy laughed, the sound cruel and delighted. "That's right. Each time you break apart, I get closer. You shouldn't have underestimated the darkness." Turning, Sarah saw Alex appear from the opposite end of the flickering light, bound by shadows that danced around his tiny frame like chains. "No, stay back!" she shouted, feeling the entire basement tremble under the weight of her fear. But it was as if the basement itself were alive, moaning and groaning in response to her distress. The walls pulsed, breathing in rhythm with her racing heart, slow and agonizing. Tommy's laughter continued, now wrapping around her like a noose. "What happens when the lights go out, Sarah? Do you think your love can save you? What will you do?" Desperation coursed through her veins. "I'll fight for my kids. You won't take them." With a surge of raw emotion, she pulled Lily close, grabbing Alex's hand. The shadows crackled and hissed, but together they concentrated on their bond. The strength of that love felt warm against the chill, pushing back against the creaking darkness. Yet, just as hope flickering to view, the lights died. In an instant, they were all back in the suffocating pitch. The weight of the shadows pressed down, 1,000 voices whispering threats, promises of chaos. "Did you really think it was over?" Tommy's voice mocked her from the darkness. "Mommy," both children called, their voices distorted and echoing. Sarah's heart sank. Alone in the darkness without them felt like a death sentence. Would they all lose this game? Was even she meant to be alone when the final act unfolded? In the silence that followed, she felt something shift. A strange rustling emerged from a corner, a sound rippling through the dark. Was something emerging from the shadows? Something beyond Tommy, waiting to drag them all deeper into the abyss? What awaited them next, beyond the veil of darkness? It was time for Sarah to find out, or fight for her life in the most harrowing way imaginable. Sarah's heart raced as the rustling grew louder, accompanied by a chilling, wet sound, something alive slithering toward her. Desperation clawed at her throat, and as she turned, she could sense the dark movement, an entity creeping through the shadows. "Alex! Lily! Hold on to each other!" she yelled, heart pounding as panic surged. She could not see them, but their voices, fragile and frightened, echoed through the heavy darkness. A flicker of light momentarily broke through the void, illuminating Tommy's devilish grin right in front of her with stark clarity. "You think you can find them? They are lost like you in the dark," he hissed. And as he spoke, the flickering light dimmed again, leaving only the volley of shadowy whispers. "No!" she cried. "I won't let you take them!" As if answering her defiance, a shrill wail erupted from the depths of the void. It tore through Sarah, a raw sound of pure agony, making her stomach twist. Was it one of her kids? Did they truly need her now? Or was it another cruel trick? Would she even recognize her beautiful, innocent children amid this nightmare? Focusing on that wavering connection, Sarah pushed against the shadows. "Alex! Lily! I'm here!" she shouted, finding strength in her voice, hoping that love would break the abyss that trapped them. Suddenly, a flash of light illuminated a figure struggling against the shadows. It was Alex, the tiny boy writhing in the grip of darkness, his frightened eyes wide. "Mommy! They're coming for us!" he screamed, anguish pouring from his words. "No! They aren't taking you! Hold on!" She lunged toward him, the shadows clawing at her ankles, threatening to drag her back. But then the sound of giggles swept through the darkness, a maddening echo that twisted her insides. "You really think they can be saved?" Tommy laughed. "This is no ordinary game." Something shifted behind her, a weight landing heavily, like a warm breath racing against her neck. Fear coiled in her gut. She couldn't bear the thought of what awaited them in this darkness beyond Tommy's grasp. Panic clawed at her senses, urging her to find her children, to pull them from the suffocating grip. "Step closer to the light! Just a little more!" she yelled as doubt crept in. She felt more shadows pressing against her, whispering secrets, urging her to look away. "Don't listen to them!" Lily's voice broke through the chaos, but it trembled as if echoing from another world. "Mommy, help us!" The faint hum of their laughter grew fainter, drawing Sarah toward the ghostly glow of the light flickering on the wall. She couldn't think. Her thoughts clashed and whirled, battling against her fading hope. The darkness was alive. It pulsed with malevolence, wrought with David's sinister delight. "What will you give up for them?" Tommy hissed, the shadows swirling. "One for another, Sarah. I'll even let you choose." With each syllable, Sarah felt the air thickening, crushing her resolve. "I'll choose nothing," she shouted, her voice breaking. "I'll choose my children!" Yet the ground beneath her feet quaked, and the light flickered ominously, nearly extinguished by the creeping malice. Then, from the other side of the room, an unnatural rustling grew again, more pronounced this time, as if something slithered toward her. Not one thing, but many. "Not just shadows, but secrets," Tommy cooed, the taunt wrapping around her like a cold fog. "What will you do when they come to play, Sarah?" A shiver raced through her, the unveiling of unspeakable truths encroaching upon her family's fate. Whatever old secrets were hidden in this place threatened to drag them all into madness. Just then, she felt it. A cold grip wrapping around her wrist, tightening ever more, a warning of something ancient waiting to claim her. The question hung in the air, chilling her to the bone. What awaited them when they finally faced the shadows hidden in the dark? The final game was just beginning. The shadows surged, overwhelming her thoughts. 1,000 whispers brushed against Sarah's skin, taunting her with truths she couldn't grasp. The grip on her wrist became an iron vice, pulsing with an ancient malice that sent shivers down her spine. She turned her head slightly, trying to catch a glimpse of what was holding her, but it was as if the darkness itself was alive, fogging her vision, cloaking everything in a veil of dread. "Let go of me," she shouted, but her voice was swallowed by the chaos. Each second felt like an eternity, the very air around her thickening, wrapping her in an invisible shroud of despair. She could see nothing but tendrils of darkness wrapping
gnashing like teeth. And behind it all, she could hear Tommy's cruel laughter, a sound that pierced her like a knife. Suddenly, Alex's cries rose above the sinister cacophony. "Mommy, help!" His voice, filled with raw fear, acted like a beacon, drawing her back from the brink of the gnawing darkness. "Don't let them take me!" "Hold tight, baby! I'm coming!" she screamed, the desperation flooding her veins. Ignoring the shadows pulling at her, she reached toward Alex, determined to bridge the distance that had somehow grown between them. But the moment she took a step forward, the ground beneath her rattled and twisted, a wicked mockery of her path. The shadows answered her challenge, reaching for her skin, slick and clammy. "You think you're strong enough. You think you can defy them." Tommy's voice swirled around her, echoing off unseen walls. "What will you sacrifice, Mother?" They weren't just threats.
They were her insecurities, her failures, the very doubts that gnawed at her heart every day of her life. The voice rang in her ears, more powerful than any physical force. "One child for another? Is your love truly that strong?" "Shut up! You don't know anything!" she yelled, but doubt clawed at her thoughts. For the briefest moment, visions of handing over one child for the other flickered through her mind, but she pushed them out, clinging instead to the pure love that exploded in her heart. "Mommy, please!" It was Lily's voice this time, shrill and frightened, barely noticeable above the raucous laughter of Tommy. "Mommy, help us! The shadows, they're waiting!" Just as she thought she might crack, a cool breeze whispered through the horrid heat, wrapping her in a soothing embrace. With a new-found resolve, Sarah gripped the shadows around her wrist and yanked hard, willing herself to break free, to fight back against the overwhelming force. "Leave us alone!" she screamed, and to her surprise, she felt some of the darkness recoil, as if injured. The voice of doubt momentarily stuttered, stumbling back. But it wasn't enough. Behind her, something shifted again, a low, rumbling growl building ominously. She turned, instinctively facing the threat, and there it was, a distorted shape, coiling and writhing like a monster birthed from her very fears. Its eyes glowed an unsettling red, hungry and awaiting. The entity opened its maw, a cavernous void filled with a stench of decay that seeped through the air, tainting everything around her. And then it spoke. "You cannot save them, Sarah. You cannot even save yourself." Panic surged, clawing its way back into her heart. She hadn't noticed before, but the whispered secrets hidden in the shadows were surrounding her, wrapping tighter, suffocating her will. Her body trembled. She was unraveling. Desperate, she scanned the flickering darkness for Alex and Lily. "I'll do anything!" she cried, the words escaping her lips before she could stop them. The shadows paused, as if considering her offer. "Then choose." Tommy's voice slipped through like a serpent. Sarah's breath hitched, her mind racing. What was the price of survival? The pulse of darkness intensified, and the monster's maw widened, ready to swallow her whole. What more had she been willing to sacrifice? Would she side with despair, or fight for her children's light? The shadows pulsed impatiently, and suddenly each beat of her heart felt like it could signal an end, or a beginning. But could she truly save them all? The air thickened, suffused with dread as Sarah's mind spun. The entity, the very embodiment of her fears, loomed larger, its red eyes gleaming with malicious delight. The shadows were alive, twisting and writhing like snakes, whispering her insecurities in a chorus that escalated her panic. "Choose." Tommy's voice ricocheted in her mind, a mocking echo that pierced her resolve. Her heart raced. Alex and Lily's faces flickered before her, their innocence trapped in the darkness like fragile butterflies. All she could hear was the relentless beat of her heart, each thud a reminder of the terrifying decision she might have to make. "Mommy, please!" The horror-stricken cries of her children surged through the veil of shadows. They were her lifeline, but the darkness promised safety in exchange for one of them. Hadn't she always feared failing them? Sarah clenched her eyes shut, willing the voices to stop. "No, I won't! I will not choose! I love them both!" she shouted, her voice raw and filled with fierce defiance. In acknowledgement of her refusal, the shadows tensed, coiling tighter. They pulled at her, sinking into her very being, dragging her down as despair threatened to consume her. The laughter echoed, and Tommy's presence loomed over her, an oppressive weight. "Love. What do you know of love?" the entity hissed, its voice slithering into her soul. "You failed them time and again. You can't protect them from what's inside you." A cry burbled from her throat, fury lighting up her insides. How dare he? Beneath the wave of dread, a flame sparked. She recalled the times she had fought for Alex and Lily, times when fear met her courage head-on. With a fierce determination, she gripped the shadows clinging to her wrist. "You don't define me," she yelled, pulling against the darkness. The shadows flinched, but quickly surged forth, straining to pull her back into the void of uncertainty. In that moment, a sudden shift shocked her. A flare of light split the darkness, a burst of her resolve shining through the despair. Shapes in the shadows distorted and twisted as her defiance echoed through the grave silence. "Sarah," a voice whispered. It was Alex. "Don't let them win." "Fight, Mommy," Lily echoed, a fragile but beautiful promise of faith. They were her two stars in the sprawling night sky, glimmering in her darkest hour. With a new conviction surging through her, Sarah envisioned her children, embraced by love and strength. "I'll save you," she declared, arms outstretched as if to gather the light within her. The growling entity retaliated, its monstrous form thrashing in fury. "You cannot escape. You will pay the price," it roared, breath rancid and tinged with despair. Around her, the shadows writhed, angered at her resolve. But Sarah pressed on, visualizing something bright and warm, an indomitable bond of a mother's love. She felt the shadows teeter, wavering for the first time as light began to seep through the cracks in the darkness, the tangible weight of hope born from love. Then it happened. The ground trembled violently, and the darkness split open like an unzipped suitcase, unleashing a whirlwind of swirling shadows around her. She felt herself being torn apart by forces beyond comprehension. But Sarah refused to let go, fiercely holding on to the image of her children, the unyielding connection that grounded her. A blinding flash surged through the chaos, and Sarah gasped as she was thrown forward, landing hard on solid ground. Gasping, she found herself in a dim room, the oppressive darkness still swirling around the edges. But the screams had faded. The echoes of her children were gone. Heart racing, she struggled to rise to her feet, hands shaking as she frantically searched the shadows, dread creeping back in. Were they okay? "Alex? Lily?" she cried, dread pooling in her stomach. Silence resumed, heavy and suffocating. But something stirred behind her, a low growl shattering the stillness, a reminder that the darkness was still there, waiting. "Your choice was only the beginning, Sarah." The menacing voice of the entity coiled through the air again, lingering like smoke. What had she unleashed? What darkness now hung in the air, and would she even recognize her children if she found them? No more choices lay ahead, only confrontation, and time was ticking. The dim room pulsed with an oppressive aura, shadows clinging to the walls like a second skin. Sarah's breath quickened as she turned slowly, eyes scanning for any sign of her children. Please, God, where are they? The growl rose again, deeper this time, vibrating through the floor up to her core. It felt almost sentient, like a predator toying with its prey. She held her breath, straining to listen. The noise stopped, giving her a fleeting moment of hope. Then a rustling came from the corner, accompanied by a soft, almost innocent giggle. Her heart leapt. "Alex? Lily?" Another giggle, but it twisted into a chuckle, hollow and heartless. Suddenly, the shadows shifted. They rippled as if a breeze had swept through, though nothing stirred in the stagnant air. The corners of the room darkened, pulling deeper into obscurity. Straining against the pull of dread, Sarah took a step forward, eyes wide and searching with desperation. "Show yourselves," she commanded, fear lacing her voice. The shadows thickened, twisting into grotesque shapes that mocked her anguish. The darkness obeyed the entity, obeyed Tommy's echoes pounding in her mind, and her heart raced. "Mom, help me!" The voice was small, like Lily's, but it came from everywhere and nowhere at once. The sound sent icy fingers down Sarah's spine. "Mommy, I can't see." "No, not like this!" Sarah screamed, her voice trembling. The darkness constricted around her, squeezing her breathing, and the chill seeped deeper into her bones. "Mommy,
The voice called again, now mixed with a terrified wail. "Mommy, it hurts." Out of fear, she lunged in the direction of the sound, but the shadow shifted away from her, taunting her pursuit. The growl returned, this time closer, more menacing. An inky figure loomed out from the shadows, its red eyes burning with pleasure. "Do you see what you're up against, Sarah?"
You cannot protect them. You'll lose everything. Adrenaline surged. "Shut up!" she screamed, desperation threading through each word. "Shut up! I'll save them!" Focusing hard, Sarah summoned every ounce of love within her. She had to believe, and that was her only weapon against this vile darkness. The entity recoiled at her defiance, its form flickering like a flame in the wind. But the shadows were not just sentient. They were cunning. They curled around her ankles, tugging her time like a riptide. The entity cackled, the sound grating, raw, and exultant. "You're losing yourself, Sarah. They are mine now." The pain of losing her children twisted her insides, and she sank to her knees. "No! This isn't how it ends!" With a roar, she fought against the weight of despair, the connection with her children alive in her heart. Drawing from that radiant love, she channeled it outward, a golden light spreading from her fingertips. It clawed at the darkness, breaking through the stifling cloud that enveloped her. The shadows screamed, a cacophony of anguish and fury as the light expanded. "Come back!" Sarah shouted, pushing through the rising panic, pushing to keep the light alive. "Please, Alex, Lily!" Light swallowed the shadows temporarily, and in that moment, a shimmering vision appeared, a glimpse of them in a field of light, reaching out to her with tiny hands, laughing. "Mommy, help!" A chorus of voices sang back to her, a mixture of her children. That vision faltered, twisting, and Sarah realized her moment was slipping through her fingers like sand. "No, you don't get to take them!" But the entity grew in strength, pulling back toward the shadows, yanking the children from her sight. As the darkness swallowed the fading light, a sinister promise lingered. "You think you know the price, Sarah. You have no idea what you've unleashed." The shadows surged as she screamed for her children, the echoes swallowed whole as monstrous laughter filled the void. Desperation clawed at her throat. What nightmare awaited in the darkness? How far would she fall before she could find them? "Time is running out." The entity growled, its final words a chilling reminder that the true horror lay yet to be revealed. As the shadows thickened, wrapping around her as if to smother her entirely, Sarah's heart raced. The room felt impossibly small, the air heavy with dread. Choking back her fear, she fought to concentrate. The light, she needed the light. It flickered now, but she could coax it back, she knew it. "Alex, Lily," she cried out, desperation spilling from her mouth like frantic prayers. Each cry for her children echoed, lost in the clutches of the dark. Instead of the comforting warmth she longed for, an icy chill seeped deeper, filling her with hopeless dread.
From within the murkiness, shadows twisted and turned, forming caricatures of her children's fleeting smiles, before collapsing back into dark shapes that mocked her shattered spirit. A whisper slithered through the air, brushing against her ear with a sickening familiarity. "They're not here. They're lost, just like you are." The entity's voice hissed, taunting her resolve. "No," she shouted back, clutching her temples as the cacophony swelled. "They're alive. I can feel them." Each syllable sliced through her throat, desperation fueling her strength like rocket fuel. But the shadows roared with mockery, and she could feel their grip tightening, squeezing the very essence of her hope. The growl rose again, this time reverberating through her bones, a sound birthed from the deepest abyss. With every pulse, every beat, it echoed this cruel truth. She was running out of time. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught her eye. A flicker of light appeared from the corner of the room, a small beacon in the all-consuming night. Sarah lunged towards it with renewed vigor, heart hammering against her ribs. She stumbled through the oppressive dark, the shadow swirling around her legs, dragging her down, but she wouldn't let that stop her. "Mommy loves you," she screamed, pushing back the encroaching darkness with each word like a shield. The light pulsed brighter, illuminating her path, and then she saw them. Alex and Lily stood just beyond the veil, their faces lit with confusion and fear, eyes wide, searching through the thick gloom that surrounded them. "Mommy!" Their cries rang clear, daggers of sound piercing through the darkness. "Hold on, I'll get you," Sarah wailed, extending her arms desperately.
But as she reached for them, the shadows surged forth, dragging her back like a riptide, their sinister whispers drowning out her cries. "Such a brave little mother," came the entity's voice, curling around her like smoke. "But your love will not save them, or you." "Shut up," she gritted her teeth, swallowed the fear knotting her stomach. "I will not give up." The words came out more fiercely. Using every ounce of strength she had left, Sarah steadied her breath, channeling her love and her unyielding will into a blinding light. The room exploded with intensity, the light flickering and dancing against the encroaching darkness. Yet she could feel the shadows sneering, clawing at the edges of her resolve. The growl became a thunderous laughter, overwhelming, menacing. "You're so close to breaking, Sarah. It will be such fun to see you crumble." Driven by dread, she pressed on, feeling the warmth of the kids' laughter in her being. Each heartbeat echoed with the steadiness of a drum, inspiring her like a battle cry. If only she could reach them. But an enormous crack erupted through the ground beneath her, a widening chasm of darkness that split the very foundation of the room. Her footing faltered as the crackle of malice surged towards her. "No!"
She shouted, eyes snapping to the children as they slipped further from her reach. The shadows grew thicker, devouring the light she was creating, drawing her back as if the very essence of hope was slipping through her fingers. "Mommy!" The wails echoed, desperate and terrified as they vanished into the ocean of black. With an agonized scream, she launched herself forward, desperate to reignite the flicker of light that could bring them back. The ground trembled violently, threatening to swallow her whole. As time stretched, pinned in that terrifying moment, a chilling realization struck her, deeper than the shadows themselves. There was a price to pay, a dark bargain sealed by fear and despair, one she could never be prepared for. What price would it demand, and would she even have a choice? Sarah's breath hitched as she fell deeper into the abyss, shadows seeping and swirling around her, night closing in. "Are you ready to face what you unleashed?" The whisper rasped softly, an echo wrapped in malevolence. But for Sarah, the true horror had only just begun. The darkness wrapped around Sarah like a suffocating blanket, clenching tighter with every pulse of her racing heart. She stumbled into the swirling void, panic tightening its grip like a vice. Where were Alex and Lily? The silence was deafening, echoing with the absence of their laughter, their cries. The shadows danced like malevolent spirits, taunting her, whispering words of despair that twisted in the air like smoke. "Please, I will do anything," she cried, her voice a raw whisper against the unyielding silence. The oppressive shadows shuddered at her words, as if they fed on her desperation. "Just let me find them." A laugh rippled through the darkness, chilling her to her core. "What will you give?" Tommy's sneering voice echoed, slithering from the depths. "One for the other. Will you sacrifice your love?" He was playing her, toying with the very essence of her heart. Every word wrapped around her like barbed wire, bruising her spirit. "No, I refuse to choose. I'll save them both." The fire within her flared, fueled by the bond of a mother's love. The shadows roared, a cacophony of malicious laughter that exploded around her, drawing closer. "Your love is a fleeting flame," Tommy taunted. "You'll watch them fade into the abyss." "Stop it," she gritted her teeth, grounding herself against the howling void that threatened to consume her. "You can't take them. You can't take my children." Just as her courage began to wane, a flicker of light pierced through the oppressive gloom. Sarah's heart surged with hope, a beacon shining amid the blackness. "Alex, Lily," she screamed, ready to throw herself into the light. But the shadows pulled her back, taut like a fishing line, ready to snap. "Hold on to each other," she ordered, clenching her fists as she strained against the overwhelming tide. "I'm coming for you." Above the rolling darkness, she caught sight of their faces, pale and frightened, peering through the shadows. "Mommy!" they cried, their voices strained, filled with desperation. "No, I'm not losing you," she cried, pulling against the waves of darkness. With each step, the shadows clawed at her, grasping for her ankles, seeking to drag her down. Fear and fury tangled within her. "I'll fight for you. I'll always fight." Rushing toward the light, she burst through the storm of shadows, feeling the weight lifting as warmth enveloped her. The growl that had haunted her for so long faded, replaced by the frantic breaths of her children. "We're here! Hold on, I can see you!" Just then, the shadows surged, snapping and clawing, mocking their bond. "You think love can withstand the darkness? Love is a chain of fear, Sarah, and you're slipping." "It's not fear that binds us," she shouted, pulling her children closer, her love igniting the space between them. "It's hope, it's trust that we will fight together." The shadows recoiled as if burned, but Tommy's laughter filled the air around them. "You're strong, but I'm stronger," he bellowed, and the ground trembled beneath them, threatening to swallow them whole. "No!" Sarah shouted, feeling the earth beneath her shift, and in that moment she knew she had to act. "We stand together!" The light flickered again, showing her a vision of their family laughing, normalcy shining through the darkness. "Remember this! Remember our love!" she urged, holding out her arms. Alex and Lily's hands slipped into hers, and the warmth surged through her, a torrent of strength that no shadow could snuff out. "We can do this! Together!" Sarah roared, her voice melting into a battle cry that ripped through the silence. The darkness shrieked in pain, retreating as the light pulsed like a heartbeat, vibrant and fierce. The shadows screeched, the entity trembling under the force of their bond. "No, you cannot win!" Tommy screamed, his form twisting like smoke. "Yes, we can!" With one final surge, Sarah cried out, channeling every ounce of love and courage into that blinding light. The shadows writhed, trying to grasp onto her, but instead bending and curling away from the brilliance that poured from her heart. Sarah felt it, a crack emerging in the oppressive darkness, creating a fissure that unleashed a burst of radiant light, a miracle forged in the fires of motherhood. "Let them go!" she yelled, and the room erupted in a cacophony of light and shadows swirling wildly. The shadows screeched, disintegrating into the very air they thrived in, leaving only faint echoes of their terror. "Mommy!" Alex cheered, eyes brightening with hope. Lily's face lit up, beaming with the joy only children can embody. As the last vestiges of darkness vanished, Sarah embraced her children tightly, tears streaming down her face. They were safe. They were together. I thought I'd lost you," she breathed, the weight of fear lifting as relief flooded through her. The room brightened, warmth enveloping them completely, and Sarah realized they had conquered the darkness that had tried so hard to tear them apart. As they stood together, the shadows faded into nothingness, mere memories of the horrors they'd faced, leaving behind only the echoes of a promise. This was a battle that had been raging within herself, and now she knew they would face whatever lay ahead, hand in hand, with love as their shield. And as the light settled around them, Sarah whispered, "We're home." Remember to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this chilling conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this end. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.